Welcome back, guys, to another episode of A Glimpse into Infinity. Today's episode will be about individuality and how specifically within the Black culture. And here, today's guest is...
Hi everyone, my full name is Oluwatimilayan Akinosho, but people call me Tim oftentimes. Just as an individual, I was raised in a suburb, I was raised in a Nigerian household, but I've met a bunch of people throughout high school years, middle school years, and everything. So I'd like to think I have a pretty good glimpse of what it means to be an individual within Black culture specifically.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and I guess some context from us.
Yeah.
So I kind of grew up in, I guess, what you call in the ghetto here. And I pretty much was surrounded throughout like high school and middle school by Black guys, Black people. I have a bunch of friends, Black friends. It's like basically split half Hispanic, half Black, barely any white friends. So I guess I also have some pretty good concepts and ideas of like what I can see from being so close.
As for me, my context with like my high school growing up, it was mostly Hispanics, just the town I was raised in. Mostly Hispanic, so like there was some Black people that I were friends with, but like the majority were Hispanic, whether being in classrooms and my friend groups. And jumping from that, we want to talk about like, because my situation has been mostly featured with like Hispanics. A lot of times you see, like, I know my parents see this, like the stereotypical Black culture, right? They look at the news and like, oh, of course, right?
Exactly. It's like they walk in like in the street, they see a person walk behind them, and it's like, oh, he Black, that's it. Let me cross the street, you know?
Let me lock my doors.
Exactly. So it's like that perception that like they basically like categorize an individual by the group. And it's like, oh, he's that one person, but he's part of that group, you know?
That group. So stay away from that.
So he must be that way, you know?
Yeah.
But as far as that sort of, stigma, that stigma has been attached to Black people specifically for a long time. With the way that media works, at least Western media works, it pretty much has put Black people on this stage where it's pretty much a glass box. You have the outside looking in, as in they see all this fabricated, sort of exaggerated portrayal of the people. But on the inside, it's like we're not much different from everybody else.
Yeah, exactly.
Not at all.
Like, we're different enough to where it's, the distinction's there, but we're still, human.
Yeah, we all have the same goal, same ambition, Some of us, we all want to go to school. We all want to, everything's the same for us. We're all human at the end.
Exactly.
And it's like...
It's just something that we have to live with, but it's also something that we want to solve. So, let's see. As far as that portrayal, for example, I know you guys have heard, like, all the police killings and everything like that. Like Trayvon Martin, George Floyd, all those killings. The types of portrayals that are portrayed within the media, and just the type of people that are in those places, policing those places, it sort of ends up to be a bit of a catch-22 because people policing, they don't know like the actual local residents there. And at the same time, it's like pretty much everyone around, like a city, for example, like Newark, like, most, a pretty big portion of Newark is Black populated, but it's not like everywhere in Newark is dangerous.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like there are plenty of places to go in Newark where you'll actually meet people having fun, people like just the local residents. They'll be good to you. They'll like actually welcome you into their activities and everything, and you'll actually get to know more about like just the place where you're at.
Exactly, like downtown, like the area around Prudential Center, all those areas. That's like the most patrolled place. Yeah. So that's like the safest place in Newark to walk at night.
Pretty much.
But some people are still scared. It's like, oh no, just because it's Newark, then everything must be bad,
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of like also relating back to the thing, individuality versus like the group.
Yeah, exactly.
They link the two and vice versa.
Yeah, it affects even some people like where they want to live. right? They're like, oh, it's a bad neighborhood, right? Because the crime rate, no, we can't live there. But they haven't even been there themselves. That's like something that's interesting, is like the fact that people a lot of times gather their opinions not from what they see, but what people tell them through sources of the media or just online in general.
Yeah, it's because some people don't actually have the, I hate to say guts, but they don't necessarily have the guts to just go out and see for themselves.
That's true.
What's everyone talking about?
Yeah.
He's like, let me see. Like where I live, like people say it's dangerous and all, but nothing has ever really happened. Even my own family, they're like, oh, don't go outside, it's dangerous. But it's like, hey man, we've been living there for 10 years and nothing has happened.
Yeah.
How come you're still scared?
I definitely see where you're coming from, because like, even though I'm originally from a suburb called Union, which is like right next to Trenton, and you know all the stories about Trenton. Trenton's this, Trenton's that, Trenton's the other. It's like, of course, a city like that doesn't come without its dangers because it is a metropolitan area.
Exactly.
But at the same time, there's a lot of good stuff going on in Trenton. I know people like that live in the city. They're doing good things, running businesses, showing off art, like just a bunch of stuff that would uplift the community so much more if that kind of stuff was reported, seen, everything like that. It wasn't just all negative. Just see the positive that comes along with it. And it is reported, but it's only on a local standpoint. Because everyone pays attention to like CNNs, the BBC.
Yeah, it's like, oh, a killing. It's like,
it
was a robbery, a killing, and it's like, but there's 100 other good things that happened that same day. So it's like, come on, man. But I guess some of these beliefs are still going because they're outdated, right? Because I mean, back in the day, some of these places that you mentioned were probably like dangerous, like pretty much all around. But the thing is, like, governments have been trying and have been like putting in more money and more resources to this like communities to like bring it up, as you said. Like, some of the beliefs are just outdated. People just need to go out there and experience it, like you said.
That is
pretty much
exactly.
And something you could also say is like there is going, like we could talk about the money aspect of things. A lot of people are saying like the reason why some schools or some neighborhoods are just bad in general is because they don't have enough funding. And when you look at it from like the context of like just school in general, like public schools in general, you definitely see a difference between like I don't know if you guys will even want to use this as a comparison, but just like the standardized tests we have to take, like throughout high school. It's just lower in bad neighborhoods. And people are like, why is that? Right? And most of the time people are like, oh, it's because there's not enough funding for like the schools. And that definitely makes sense, because from like my perspective, if I was a teacher in that school, like, I hate to say it, but like, depending on how much I get paid is how much work I'm going to put in. You get me?
Yeah, exactly.
That's just the fact. Like, being a teacher is a very underrated profession, because not only do you have to teach kids, but you see the kids as, coming back to the topic of individuality.
Exactly.
You see many different walks of life when it comes to just school in general. You've seen people come up from grimy places. You've seen people come from like literally like gold mansions and all of that. So putting that into perspective, it's like that kind of individuality, it's kind of hard to just coalesce it into a public setting like that without running into problems, and especially with the metrics that they use, because the standardized testing, that's its own story. But it's like you said, it's an outdated metric to measure like aptitude for anything. It's just like, I know a ton of people who they probably could have gotten their hands on engineering easily. It's not that they didn't have the smarts for it, it's that they either weren't interested or they were taught in a way that just didn't suit them as an individual. So with individuality, it's like it's really hard to use generalizations to try and paint individuals within one community.
It's like that quote that says, it's like, how can you test the ability of a fish to climb a tree? It's like he's gonna fail.
Pretty much. That's pretty much like it's that kind of contradiction is like ingrained within the systems that we work in. So it's like you're in a feedback loop. You're in a feedback loop. As people ask the question over and over again, and it's like, okay, you keep asking the question, but when you've actually looked at where it stems from, you're actually gonna take the time to change that, because that's overhauls on overhauls. You gotta literally break things down and rebuild that back up. And it's like, it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. And change definitely takes time. And something you could say, like, change takes time, but some change won't happen if there's things like, because like some things are just out of our control. Like some people are just not willing, like they're not open-minded. Like let's say our parents have like old traditional values or they believe in stereotypical categorizing like black people in general and in a negative way, right? And then when they have kids, they enforce that on. They pass it on. And it doesn't help that the news is like another killing, and then my parents are like, look, of course it's the black guy. Like that's not okay.
That's not, like, that kind of just perpetual cycle.
Like you said,
like,
the loop.
It's pretty much a loop that, at least I would say, us as black people, even us as minorities, we recognize that it's a feedback loop because we're the ones who are trapped in the center of it. But everybody else looking on the outside, they don't realize, oh, I'm like, you're always like, they never ask the question of, okay, why exactly am I afraid of this set of people? Why exactly, where exactly did it even come from? Or like, why does that fear prevent me from doing things that I may want to pursue in the future? Because I would believe that kind of just that kind of racism, that's got to be a really big roadblock on some people's futures, because they're just not willing to work with some people. They're just not willing to at least, stand on their own 10 toes, and they just flounder.
It creates that roadblock. For example, like, I mean, kids here, when they're like young in the like pre-K, kindergarten, they're all together. They don't have any malice. They see everyone truly as equal. They have black friends, Asian friends, or whatever, Hispanic friends. And then like they come back home, tell their parents about their black friend, and then their parents is like, oh, he's like, don't stay too close for him. Like, don't let him borrow your Crayolas or whatever. And, it starts there. Like those little things starts going there, and then they start relating. It's like, oh, okay, I can't have friends like that. I need to have friends that I guess that look like me, and like you said, it's that whole loop.
Exactly.
It's like, can I go to their house? Like, no.
Exactly. I've seen that many a time before. I've seen that many a time where it's like, I only have, just because of the environment that I was raised in, like, I only had so many white people at my house, man. So it's like, some parents were open-minded enough to see me and my family for me and my family. Some and not a black family, It's like, Tim's family, Exactly.
Yeah, I'll say school plays a big role though. Like the way different schools are run, I guess like majority white schools compared to like minority schools. And I noticed this when I got to college. So my roommate freshman year, right? Or I guess people I met freshman year, that my notion in high school was that my high school was like one of the best high schools, because we won all these awards. We won like a blue thing award. We're winning all these things. We're like the top high scorers. I'm like, damn, bet I'm gonna come in here and everyone's gonna recognize me. It's like, my high school big. And then I see from all these other people, it's like, oh no, I'm a year ahead because I took college classes in my high school. Like they gave me college credits that I could take. Oh, I'm a year ahead because of this. Oh, my high school this. And I'm like, what the hell? It's like, this school's just by the sound of it sound better. And then I go and look it up, and all these awards we won, all this everything, we're like top from the minority section. And I think that's a big problem. I think that's a big problem,
That definitely is a big problem, because the thing is that kind of grouping takes away some people's merits and individuality.
Exactly.
Like, for example, it's like, A good example of this is I am once a Eagle Scout, always an Eagle Scout, but I am considered a Boy Scout, and I was the only black person in my troop, but still, people find that admirable in some capacity just because of the type of work that's put into it.
Yeah.
But if it were something like, oh, he was I wasn't a part of the Boy Scouts of America, but something that they relegated to, okay,
minorities.
They relegated to minorities. I don't think that would do very much wonders for who I am as an individual, because it's like, just because I'm black doesn't mean I can't put in work like everybody
exactly
else. Like, I have my own aspirations too. I'm still my own person. You can't just tie me to the color of my skin like that.
And I feel like minority schools, they waste all this money, all these resources, trying to like hide that from us and like make us seem good just out of the minority section, you know. Well, like, I guess just normal, majority schools, they actually spend the resources into developing programs and having things for the students to find like interesting things. Something I noticed is like my high school, we didn't have no sports basically. Like, we had to the only football field was hella far. The only pool was hella far. Everything was super far. But then you go to this white high schools and they have everything in their backyard right there.
The whole football field.
You know, so as a student, they have all these options. They have all these clubs, all these activities. In my high school, I had nothing. I just had school. Go to school, write my notes down, study, then go back home. So, you know, spend these resources, spend this money into doing things that can help us be more individualistic, be ourselves, find ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and a lot of times, like what you were saying before on aspirations on race, I want to ask you how that affected you growing up.
So aspirations, when you might need to elaborate a little bit.
Oh, okay. Because I'm just making an assumption because you said you had a lot of white friends over, so I'm assuming that your school was suburban in the sense it was mostly white people.
You'd be surprised. It was actually majority black.
Oh,
that's the thing.
Oh, wow.
Because when I'm telling you, the way that our high school was positioned, we were right here. The border of Trenton is a street down. It's literally a street down.
It's pretty much Trenton.
Yeah, like most people, if you go the way that it was set up, if you go down, there was an elementary school a little bit further down. That it's that's pretty much the end of Ewing, and then you step into Trenton after that. We were that close. Oh, wow. So when you think about it, just in a geographical perspective, it's sure, my high school, I wouldn't say it's anything stand out, but at the same time, you met a lot of people from just a lot of different places just because of the kind of area that we were in.
Okay. Yeah, it's emerged. It's it was in the center of multiple things.
Exactly. You had the super rich you had the super rich families in one area, and then Trent was literally right there. Our high school was pretty much amalgamation of everything, because it's I know some of the richer families elected to send their kids to private school, but everyone who went to public school, it's everybody comes from a different walk of life. So
yeah. So do you think that helped? Because also something that we see in schools is people find their own groups that basically look like them in a way or another.
Yeah.
Do you think having this whole merge, all these different groups helped that, enforce that, or
It probably helped me a lot more than even I realized sometimes, because for example, the way that I was in high school, because I wasn't even into sports that much. I was a band kid. I was in a marching band, played clarinet and saxophone, and I've been playing piano for years. So I wasn't that much into sports, but it's not only with the size of our school, but with the people that I knew, it's I knew the athletes, the people that were for certain going to go pro in some capacity, whether it be college, maybe
the big big
minor leagues and whatnot. I also knew the theater kids, like the people you would call a little bit eccentric, but like you put them on a stage, give them a script, and suddenly they bring all this stuff to
they
life.
let it all out.
Yeah, like literally, like who they are is personified by the stage, and then it's like getting that intersection of people, sort of like I think it helped it ground me a little bit as to like who I am as an individual, because it's like we all have our different strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, exactly.
And the fact is that like, oh, like if I want to depend on you for this, that, and the other, it's like we'll ask about it, and it's not, and it'll still be love between everybody, because it's like at the end of the day, it's like, hey, we're in some capacity, we're all in this together. We're trying to graduate. We're trying to do good for our families. We're trying to find ourselves and trying to make ourselves the best versions of us that we can be. So, with that being said, like, just like it did help cement my individuality a little, because I was able to just work with different people.
Yeah, and since you had to work with different people, you had to like somewhat adjust to this type of people, because you can't really be like the same.
Yeah.
Or I guess portray yourself the same to everyone, you know?
Yeah, pretty much.
And you got to reach out to different people too, because like you were saying, since now you're in school, that's kind of like what we were mentioning in the second episode with the common goals. It kind of applies to here. I feel like when there's more diversity in like a school setting, since everyone's trying to graduate, like you said earlier, I feel like it makes people more open to talking to different ethnicities and groups. And
this barriers is like they go down,
and those stereotypical thoughts just go away.
They have to go away.
It's like we're all students. We're all students here.
We're all students.
Taking the same class. We have the same worry, which is we gotta pass this test. You know, everything else doesn't matter.
Exactly. Like we're just trying to make it.
I did kind of struggle with that at the beginning, since I came from, like I said, like minorities, Hispanic, and just black people. I found myself like having a hard time like interacting with other cultures. And I still kind of do like have a hard time with that. Like with like white guys or white people, I had a hard time interacting with them, because I just couldn't find a common ground, you know. It was totally different. They portray themselves differently. I do it differently, and it's like, how do I do it, man? You know, I never experienced that like you did, kind of.
But even then, even with all of that stuff, there was still some difficulties that I had, because like just thinking about it, just thinking about it holistically, I wouldn't necessarily call myself like it was mentioned earlier, I wouldn't necessarily call myself a typical black kid. Like the fact that I played a bunch of musical instruments like that, the fact that like in my area I was one of the few Nigerians around, like also the fact that I was one of the few Boy Scouts or anything, just like the way, like the circles that I was placed in and the things that I did, I wouldn't necessarily consider myself typical, and it might have like helped in some areas, but it definitely also hurt in some areas. Just like for example, I wasn't really able to interact with my own people properly until I got to college. Like when I got to college, I started meeting a few more black people that were like me in a capacity, but at the same time, they came from even more. They came from broader backgrounds, and with that being said, it's like just interacting with them, getting to know who they are, like telling them who I am, like just trying to find common ground interests, trying to find at least something that we can relate to each other, or just trying to be friendly. Something as simple as that. It did help me like expand a little bit, like as a person, and I'm able to at least interact on a cordial level.
I heard stories similar to that. It's like with like black babies that were like adopted by white families. You know, they grow up not speaking like how they say, like speaking black, not dressing black, or like not portraying themselves as black, and like they see themselves like being outcasted by the black community. because always like you don't sound black, you're not black, and then they go through this, you know.
Yeah, they have that. That definitely is a struggle because it's like it's like you're telling me I'm not black, but like I still have some of the same pitfalls that I have when it comes to interacting with people outside of my race. Those don't go away. Like just because I was adopted by different like people of a different skin color,
Exactly.
it doesn't necessarily make my life any easier.
So then I guess there's still we talked about that external, like individual versus group, but then there also seems to be like that internal one,
Yeah.
where it's like the black community doesn't really like to
recognize
accept like their own like black people who don't really behave or act like them, kind of in a sense,
Yeah, because
like basically what you explained.
like that's true, but also at the same time, you gotta realize that the black community, it's not a monolith.
It's
that's
not.
that like that's something that is like media and like a lot of that stuff. It does portray
as one.
Yeah, they portray the black people as this overwhelming monolith that you can't necessarily pick out from. That's not the case. Like, for example, like just looking at some of the civil rights leaders, you'd realize like
How diverse it is, right?
yeah, like just the diversity of opinion, the diversity of how we solve our problems and everything. MLK and Malcolm X could be
exactly.
two different individuals trying to strive for the same goal.
Same goal, different approaches.
Yeah, completely different.
Yeah, absolutely different. So that being said, just like it's just something to realize that like even like me as just one individual of the black community, like I love all my people, but still we're all different from each other in some capacity.
Yeah. Okay.
Going back to what you said earlier, I thought it was like an interesting thing. You said like a black baby adopted by white parents. In my head, the first thing that came to mind was like, what if you look at the opposite, like just black parents having a kid and it turns out albino or albino, right? So now they have the interest of the black community, but then they're ostracized by both sides, both black and white. It's like, how do you live with that? How would you, like, what advice would you give to someone that's trying to be accepted, like, by the black community and they are black themselves? Like, would they have to like follow the same interest, or just can they really be individualistic?
I don't really see that happening though within like I guess like the black communities, right?
Actually, you're right in that regard because I remember seeing, because like the thing is that the black community, it's not just when you think of the black community. If I just what I might one thing that I want to ask you guys, we talking about America. Because the thing is that America is its one thing. Like, for example, with the amount of times that I've been to Nigeria, I've seen people of fair skin or of, like, you wouldn't necessarily consider them albino, but they just have less melanin in their skin.
Exactly.
So it's like that kind of thing, and like considering who they're surrounded by, it's like sometimes you do see that, other times it's like they still manage to stand on their own feet because they have a sense of individuality. Like, yes, I am black. I am a part of the black community, but I'm still me.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know. I also have like kind of like a fine line. I don't know, because I guess in overall, like, let's say if I'm in a worldly sense, I am black. Most of my descent is African, right? I was born in Dominican Republic. So obviously, mostly everyone there is descendants from African,
the
like straight
Republic has they have deep roots.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much like our music, food, pretty much relates all the way back to that. But then here, like within like I guess America, is like I'm technically not considered black. Like if I told someone it's like, oh, I'm black, they're like, no, you're not. It's like they would basically tell me I'm not black, and it's like, oh no, you're Hispanic. So it's like this whole different category.
People also like to categorize things.
They
like something else. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, even then, like you can still go, but all I was gonna say is that the labels that are painted around here, they're real. It's almost like micromanagement.
Exactly.
Like the way that you can just label something and it's like very, very specific. It's like it makes sense, but at the same time, not really.
Yeah.
I mean, are the labels ever gonna stop though? Because
that's what I was saying.
It's like
the statistics, like the statistics wise, something I just like was hearing was like, why are we calling people black, Asian, Hispanic? in the United States. Like, why can't we just all be American, right?
Yeah, we are all American. We all live here. We all work here. We all like. You see the military. You see how many people in the military come from different backgrounds. Like we are all on the same land. We're all fighting for same people that we'd like to consider family. But at the same time, it's like there's some people that would be very selective about who they consider family, who they consider friendly, all that kind of stuff. To the point where it's like, to the point where it seems like they just don't seem kind at all.
Yeah, and it seems like they would just keep doing that, like with no stop.
Yeah,
just like I said, like the labeling and the categorizing. Because like I said, in the world concepts, I'm black. In American concepts, I'm Hispanic. Then within the Hispanics, I'm Dominican. Within the Dominicans, I'm from a certain region of DR, which their region is different from all the other regions. Then within that region, I'm from a certain city. And then within the city, I'm from a specific part, and it's all different.
Yeah.
And within that part, we still have minor parts, which also varies a lot.
Different accents too sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah. Like it's the same thing. Like as a Nigerian, I'm specifically of the Yoruba tribe, but like the like just that tribe in general. There's probably a ton of other like minor tribes within, and just. That sort of like narrow focus, sometimes it does take away from the fact that I still go through same struggles. I can still relate to some of the people that I interact with, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so it's like those like really tiny ones. They really matter at that point. It's like just that you have like a slightly different dialect. Does that really matter? It's like
I feel like that's why people generalize. Because they don't really care to like know that much about you, so they just put externally just a label on you, like, oh, you're Dominican. They're like they don't want to know more about like where you're from or like what part you're from, because like we said, like each part has its own different things, and that contributes to your characteristics,
Exactly. Like it like that. Just piggybacking off that, it's like. That contributes not only to my characteristics, but how I'm going to perceive myself anyway, like as an individual. Like for example, it's like, yeah, I'm a proud Nigerian. Like whenever I'm able to, I support Nigeria with who I am. But it's like at the end of the day, it's like just because like I'm a Yoruba man, I don't necessarily get into squabbles with Igbo people all the time. I don't get into squabbles with Hausa people all the time. They're all still Nigerian.
Exactly. Yeah. So something I guess like an example with us is like within Dominicans, it's like they completely like bash you if you don't know how to dance, right? Or just Hispanics in general. It's like you don't know how to dance, or like when someone say I'm Hispanic, but they say they don't know Spanish. It's like, oh, don't call yourself Hispanic then. Yeah. You see? So then these people are forced to like start behaving that way, start acting that way, start changing themselves to fit within the label placed by the people around them. You know, and you're forced to do that to be accepted.
That's true.
And it's like everyone does want that kind of acceptance because you want to be surrounded by your own people, but at the same time, it's like some people have to realize that even within their own people, there's just so many people you're going to end up meeting. Like, life is just a bunch of interactions, some long, some short, and you got to realize that some people, like, it's just like they are who they are, but
you are
at
who
the
you
end
are.
At the end of the day, they're still your people.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's interesting because like you're right. Like a lot of times you have to conform to these like quote unquote like necessities for like certain cultures, like for the Hispanic aspect of things. I know I could say not knowing how dance definitely hinders like a lot of things.
Yeah, same here. They just say that you'd be surprised. Like I always tell people, oh, I have 2 left feet when I dance, and it's like they sometimes believe me, sometimes they don't. But at the same time, it's like I was never that much of a dancer as a kid. Like I was always the type of Nigerian who would be in his books.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
just
study. Like,
that's how it be sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, like I didn't have much time to dance. Doesn't make me any less Nigerian.
Exactly.
I guess. What then, in your opinion, like makes you part of a certain like label. Is it like, for example, like let's say countries, for example, is it that you're born there, or like as people say, it's like all these things from that country that relate to you, right?
Yeah.
For example, let's say you were born in the U.S. and then you go back to, let's say you go and live in Mexico, like your whole life.
Yeah.
Like when you were 2 years old, you go into Mexico. It's like, are you Mexican or you're American?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, because like the thing is that my mom, interestingly enough, like even though everybody considers her Nigerian, she grew up like a small portion of her life. She grew up in the UK, so it's like that point. Like my mom considers herself a little British.
Exactly.
She adopted some of the lifestyles that were presented to her by her parents and the environment around her, brought them with her to Nigeria. When she was in Nigeria, she adopted different lifestyles, and while keeping some of the British lifestyles, she adopted some Nigerian lifestyles. And when she got here, she did the same thing. It's just like being that much of a worldly person, you're always going to end up picking up a little bit here and there from wherever you come from.
I guess, yeah, that relates to like what you said.
Yeah.
About like, let's say a baby, like a white baby growing up in like a black family. And I was saying how, from my experience, like the black community and black people are just more accepted, like more willing to accept like people from outside, right? Yeah. Because I'll be seeing like white guys with like dreads and everything, just chilling with like their group, and they were all black. He was the only white guy, and then we just be chill. And like this white guy, he will say the N-word and no one will see it as bad, because he grew up there, he was raised there, so they don't see it as bad. Same thing with Hispanics. Like a lot of Hispanics say the N-word and they don't see it as bad. It should be like, it shouldn't that word shouldn't be said, but that's a whole different topic. But
it's like just where like it is just a product of where you were raised, because it's like that's the language, everybody's using it. Like,
they don't see us bad.
When you use language around people, I would say people who you're familiar with, is like, if they're not commenting on it, then I guess everything is fine. Like, I guess just like, then it comes to where, there are some people like that boundary is like, I know me as a black person, it's like, as far as the N-word, even I set the boundary for myself that I only use it around my black friends. I only use it around my black friends, and I use it very, very sparingly. That being said, though, it's like somebody says it, and it's like, you see who they're around, it's like, okay, I don't want to say I guess, but at the same time, it's like, there's not really much I can like do. I can't be like, yo, stop using that word right now, because it's like, guys surrounded by a bunch of black people who use it on a daily basis, or not even a daily basis. They are black, so it's like, it's not like you can tell them to change on the flip of a dime. Like you said, change takes time, and like what you would hope is that like maybe they realize, okay, maybe I need to set that boundary of how much I'm even when I mean, not even when, like if I use that word at all. Like when I got here, like since, like I said, I'm from the ghetto. Like I used to say the word. I used to just normally, and I didn't even know what he meant. I just, since I picked up the language, I thought it was just like saying bro. Since it was thrown around so easily, I'm like, oh, what's up, bro? And I didn't know about the word. I didn't know where it came from. I didn't know about it. I just thought it was, another word. Until like I learned, until like I got educated and learned where it came from, and I was like, wait, should I even be saying this at all? Just like to anyone? Like kind of like you said, it's like you use it only with like when you're like with a like specific group of people. That also matters. And I seen from my friends in DR, they say it because they hearing like the music that is popularized, right? And they have even less clue than what I did when I was here, and they just throw it around like because they think it's catchy, they think it's a popular word, but they don't know. And it's like at that point, it's like they don't see it as bad, they don't perceive it as bad, because they don't know.
That's another thing you could talk about, like just like a common, like I know this is a common opinion I say common because like I've seen, like I've talked to white people before, and they're like, all this is coming from the gang culture expressed in rap and the songs they listen to, but
That's just another
generalization.
Yeah.
It's another generalization, and it's a generalization that I honestly believe was like engineered by somebody. Like somebody in a position of power did that. Like they came up with like they're all using that word in music and like all this other mediums, and it's like they know the history of that word, but they still use it, so that means I should be able to use it. That does not mean that.
Exactly.
It simply does not mean that, because we're using it within our own circles. We're not calling white people that.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not giving, it's not even giving that pass. It's just like, you're just different. Like that's a distinction that makes you who you are and makes me who I am.
Exactly.
It's like you like that distinction, even though I don't judge you for that distinction is still there, and we have to respect it in some capacity. Like
it's like the boundaries.
Exactly. That's what it is. It's a boundary. It's not necessarily a label, because I feel like labels are like a little bit man-made, and they can get, so you can change the goalposts with them so much that at some point it's like, okay, what exactly is this supposed to be establishing here? But an actual boundary is like something where both people can mutually understand why it's there and for what purpose it serves.
Something about labels is like, you gotta be like just in today's society, like not even just within the black culture, within different cultures, there's always labels thrown around for each ethnicity, right? And something that is really common is that people, especially when we're younger, we usually fit into those labels because we're still learning who we are. And a lot of times that can go one of two ways. You can finally find who you are, or you just conform to the label. And it's really hard to break out of it once you're already in it too deep.
I guess, but are labels and generalizations really all that bad? Because I feel like thinking about it right now, it's like, I think one reason why we've seen more like mergence and more like interconnections and more interrelations between these different groups is because with social media, we are able to learn more about these groups, right? And since we're able to learn more about the general group, we're able, I guess, to like break the initial barrier and then get to know the individual in a sense.
That is true, because that's one thing where it's like, that's what flips labels on their head a little bit, because they do, like, that specification does contribute to who the individual is. So it's like that's why I said labels are something that you can move around, but when a label is like firmly in place and like you understand like why it's there, it's like, okay, that makes you should, maybe not everybody does, but you should come to a logical conclusion that that makes sense why everybody, like, that attachment is even there. Like, that attachment is either something to be proud of or it's something to respect.
Yeah, and labels, like, they can definitely be, I guess, it's like a double-edged sword kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, like a really negative way, like, just an example I've seen, like, I've experienced myself. Let me give a personal anecdote. So, just in high school, it's like, not necessarily a label, but it's just an example of something that can be converted into a label. So, like, in high school, I remember I had a substitute teacher one time, and I turned the desk around because I'm like, substitute teacher, bet, let's play cards. Right? So I already had the desk turned around, and I started dealing out the cards. Our friends were sitting next to me, and he told me, he was like taking attendance, and before he even started calling out names, he was telling me, like, he paused and he's like, everyone, look at this guy. He's like, you see him? He's never gonna be anything in life. All he does is play games. And like, that's something that, like, since you're young, you can definitely turn that into a label. Like, I don't know if you guys seen The Breakfast Club. It's a great movie that shows labels. Like, even the bully is labeled as dumb. Like, he's not gonna contribute to anything in life or society, and he starts acting that way. He starts smoking cigarettes. But when you get to know him throughout the movie, you realize that's not the case.
Exactly.
And that's why labels can be a double-edged sword.
Exactly. That is a good comparison of why labels can be a double-edged sword, but it's also the reason why you have to learn how to wield that sword properly.
Exactly.
So it's like you're not trying to burn yourself, but trying to cut straight. So it's like if you use it in the right way, labels are perfectly fine. Like they're supposed to be specifiers, and they should be used in that manner when you're trying to specify something. But manipulating it for like a generalization, this, that, or the third, that's when you start to get into too much gray area. Because it's like, we understand that there's gray area with everything, but you still see the little bits of black and white. If you get into a place where it's like, you're just so murky that you can't even make not even a generalization, you can't make a decision of what's right and what's wrong, that's when you get problems.
One of the good ways that like knowing about these generalizations can help you is, for example, if you like, let's say I'm a white guy and I like a black girl, right? And I'm trying to get to know her, and there is certain things, certain ethnic groups see as wrong that you might not see as wrong, right? And vice versa. And one generalization is that black girls just don't like it when you touch their hair. Don't touch a black woman's hair. That's all. Just don't do it. But if I'm a white guy and I didn't know about that, I come in and like just trying to be friendly or whatever, just touch her hair, she's not gonna like that. That's it. That it ends there. But now I know about this generalization, right? That applies to, I guess, most of them, and I respect that boundary, and I just don't touch her hair, even if I think I'm doing it playfully or whatever. I just don't do it.
Yeah, and not unless you get consent to do so.
Exactly.
It's like it's just respect.
Yeah, in that sense, it kind of helps, knowing these generalizations, like you said.
Exactly.
No, like also, like let's say with Asians. When you go to an Asian person's house, you take your shoes off. You see, another generalization that helps you out, interact and form connections with these other groups.
Exactly.
I feel like that's like just problems. Like, I feel like in a sense, like those problems those conflicts you get with other cultures, I kind of like will help you get closer to one another.
Yeah.
Let's just say you go to like order some Middle Eastern food, and you're like, let me get some beef. And they're like,
you see?
like beef. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
So that's the problem. That's the initial barrier. So you gotta get through the initial barrier to get to know them as a person. If I go to my Asian friend's house and I don't take my shoes off, that's it. That barrier, they don't like me. They're not gonna form a connection with me because I broke that barrier. I didn't break the barrier, the general barrier. If I touch my black girl, the girl I'm trying to get with, if I touch her hair, that's it. She's not gonna give me a chance. I'm not gonna get with her. But if I break through the barrier, then I can get to know her as a person, who she is, and I can get to know my Asian friend, because now he knows I know the boundaries. He knows I respected them, and he knows I'm able to merge with them because, like I follow like
and especially when you're told the boundaries, because that's
exactly.
the other. That's like the other portion of that problem. It's like some people are told where the boundaries are, maybe like. And they don't draw the logical conclusion of, I need to respect the boundaries. Whether it be it just doesn't come to them, or they believe that they believe they're not trying to conform to that culture. It's like, you're not trying to conform to the culture, but the thing is that it's not yours. It's
exactly
the other person's, and you're trying to get to know the other person. So you should respect that.
And that's what I'm saying. That's why I think social media has been a great help, because you learn about these things, You learn about all this.
It's definitely better to talk to them in person than to like do it through social media, because social media can, like we said earlier, can paint a picture. Well, that's not necessarily true with any culture, really. And sometimes when it comes to those boundaries, I think oftentimes it's like an innocent mistake, like not taking your shoes off in an Asian household, and then instead of like the Asian family telling you like why it's wrong, they just like they don't like you from then on. So like something that just combat that, right, moving forward for like any culture really. It's just like people just need to be like more like forgiving to people. Like everyone's so serious, like you make one mistake and it's over.
Yeah, but like Tim said, like if they were told, and like they still,
that's a different story. If it's told and they still do it, no.
Yeah, but you are right, being at least a little bit forgiving about that, at least letting people learn, because that's the other portion of that. Like, it's like they say, "Oh, why is this that? Why is this that?" Like, and you realize they're asking all these questions. If they're genuinely asking those questions to make sure that they make a better decision, then it's like you gotta give them the knowledge. So
yeah, and I do think like these generalizations are going to stay here just for a while, right? Because once you start, let's say, meeting Asian people and going to their house and you ask them, it's like, oh, why do I gotta take my shoes off? And they say, it's like, well, you come from outside where like all the saliva, and you bringing that to your house, your safe place, and you're rubbing your clothes like when you sat on the bus where millions of people have said, you're bringing all those germs and all that to your bed, and you're like, that makes a lot of sense. I'm gonna start implementing that, right? Let's say white people who have the stereotype of not seasoning their food, and they go to like their black friend's house and they have like the best food they ever did. It's like, damn, I should start cooking like this. You know, they start implementing these things, like getting the best out of each other, and then at the end, it's just like, it's like
better people,
and like this generalization is like, oh, black people like put hella seasoning in their food. That's just gonna be gone because everyone is gonna be doing that. Because it's just better food, you know.
Yeah, it just tastes better.
It just tastes better, you know. So I think these generalizations are gonna stay just for a while. Eventually, we're gonna like average down, pretty much, and like
because like at that point, will still be your own culture. If you take so many bits and pieces from other cultures, could you still like maintain that individuality of your own culture?
You definitely could. Because the thing is that like you're just like as an individual, you're still doing it. General culture doesn't necessarily change from all those micro bits and pieces. Because a good example, a good example is actually soul food. So like soul food, like the story behind soul food, it's like it came from slavery. But at the same time, you see soul food now, and it's like the stuff is absolutely like if anybody were to give you any place like mac and cheese, cornbread, all that stuff, it's like that stuff is delicious, and you see why into the like you see like even though you know the history behind it, you see that's something good. That's it. Yes, it's good. Like that's something good that came from a very dark place, and it's like you learn to appreciate it, and like it may start happening more.
Exactly, yeah. But also with that, it's like people also like to make variations to things, right? Let's say, for example, soul food, and like they add their twist to it and start making basically a whole nother thing. But because they had traces of soul food, they still call it soul food. Then it's not really soul food, you know? Call it something else, because that's like taken away from that, from like the culture. Yeah. It's like in order to classify soul food, it like needs like these set requirements, you know?
That's true. That is true.
I guess that, you're right then. Because if you don't do that, well, it would lead to just like miscommunication between cultures. It's like, oh, that soul food is so good. It's like,
it's like soul food. It's like, yo, that's pizza. What you mean? It's like soul food pizza. It's like soul pizza. It's like, hold on. What is this? That ain't soul food, bro. You see what I mean? Things like that. Like to that extent.
Like just like still respecting the boundaries, but even then, just like also recognizing that it is its own individual thing.
Exactly.
And recognizing that it's just not like, oh, soul food is for black people. Recognizing that soul food good as hell, and if you like it,
if you like it, you like
eat your soul food, man. Do your soul food. If you can be white and cook soul food at home if you like it, you know. Don't say it's yours. Don't say, oh no, this is mine. It's not yours. You know.
You know where you got it from. Yeah, like at the same time, if you're good at it.
Exactly.
That's another thing we could just touch upon, like cultural appropriation. Like when people be taking other cultures and like taking it as their own. Like, what do you guys think about that?
Now, cultural appropriation is where it's where you don't necessarily respect those boundaries as like the individuals in the culture, because it's like when you just start saying stuff is yours, that's greed. That's essentially greed without noticing like, oh, like no, I got this from somewhere. I didn't just make it myself. Like somebody taught me this, somebody showed me something, and it's like I drew a little bit of inspiration from it. Like that's what makes it not cultural appropriation, because you know where you got it from and you know why you respect it. Yeah.
You see that a lot on like celebrities. Like I've been seeing a lot with like female celebrities, like white female celebrities. They do like basically black girls haircuts and hairstyles, And then it's like, hey guys, look at my new style. And he's like,
It's not yours.
it's not yours. It's not new. It's been going on.
Yeah.
And yeah, been like criticizing them and hurting them over those styles, and now you repping it like it's something new out of nowhere. It's like, oh my god, look, so fashionable.
I've seen like a story of that, like this white woman who was just like, she had like the whole Indian, I don't know what's it called, but she had the whole dress and everything, and the red dot on her forehead, and white people were like calling her out, saying it was cultural appropriation, but her husband was Indian.
Yeah.
So is it really a cultural appropriation at that point if she's just like uniting her culture with her husband?
But I mean, if she wasn't claiming it as,
She wasn't claiming it. She was just like walking
Yeah.
like down the street and people were just selling her stop.
I guess, yeah, that's where problems start coming
Yeah.
in. Because it's like,
That's-
on one hand, it's like, yeah, she's just walking down the street, and it's like, you don't necessarily, you don't know her enough to just try and start saying stuff. But on the other side of the spectrum, it's like you would see why it's easy to be confused.
Yeah.
Because you see so many people do it,
Exactly.
and you see they don't care where it came from. It's all theirs now, but that's not how that works, right?
exactly.
So it's like that's where it starts to get on the case by case basis scenario, because it's like, yeah, she's walking down the street, she's not harming anybody, she's just doing her, but her is also like what her husband brought to her as an individual.
Yeah,
So it's like, yeah, there is no reason not to respect it, as long as she does.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I guess like we said, that relates to like the boundaries of the cultures, because I guess the white people that criticize her didn't have any, I guess, right to criticize her, since that's not theirs. Like that cultural outfit is not theirs, right? She tried to judged by the Indian community, since that is their culture. Because if you go to Japan, and like a lot of tourists in Japan, they wear the kimonos, and Japanese people like this because it's representing their culture. They know you're doing it because they know you like their culture, and you're doing it.
Yeah,
because
just
it's
represent. Yeah,
exactly, and they don't see it as bad, you know. So I guess it's like you gotta see it from the point of view of
Both sides.
the cultures.
Yeah, the actual culture, like where it stems from.
Exactly.
Like I said, this like celebrities using like black women's hairstyle. The black women don't like it. They're like, nah, don't be doing that. That's ours.
Yeah.
Then you should respect that. It's like,
Exactly.
don't do it. Keep doing your
that
own
simple.
styles. You know. Yeah. But if the Indian community like basically likes that she's representing them and she wants to adapt them, I think it should be fine, you know. And like the white people not that they can't say anything, but
You're right.
you know,
They need to respect that.
yeah.
At least you're gonna ask like, what's up with the outfit? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's just assumptions at the end of the day. And
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't blame no one for the assumptions. Like, we all make assumptions.
We all make assumptions, but at the same time, we also have to respect that opinions are like an asshole. Everyone has one.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta realize that it's like, yeah, I do have my own opinion. That doesn't just mean I'm gonna start being like, I'm gonna start putting everyone's opinions on them.
Yeah,
That sort of
exactly.
thing. So it's like, it's an opinion. It's a very valid opinion to have, but balance that.
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess we can say that like cultures, communities, and individuals kind of like are intercorrelated, and they bounce off each other. You are, as an individual, part of something bigger, part of a culture, part of something. But then that culture also makes you an individual yourself,
Exactly.
and you're within yourself. You're your own person, and it's like you
It's
know,
crazy, these layers.
it's like layers, but then they loops back again.
Uh-huh. It is that layered because like, and when you actually take time to think about it, it's like the reason why you would think like, oh, the black community as a whole, like, it's just like, if you actually take a look at the layers themselves and who they make as people, it's like the black community is like, it was crazy. It's crazy that slavery's happened, Jim Crow segregation's happened, at
All
least in
that.
America, all that's happened, and you still see some of the coolest people you've ever seen on the earth. Like,
Some best parties, best food. I'm not trying to say anything, but
like, yeah,
let's get that food. Come on, man.
That's
food.
Hey, that's hey man, I ain't doing nothing. But yeah, like, just see like who they are as individuals within the group, and it's
Exactly.
like yeah,
And
that
see
is
what-
the black community.
and see how what the group has to offer, like with all of them, with all these individuals, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming, Tim.
Hey, man.
Appreciate
thanks
it,
for
bro.
having me. I
Yeah.
appreciate doing this, man.
No problem, bro. Is there any advice you give to other people who are just like, maybe let's say their parents are just like closed-minded and they're making all these assumptions like we've been saying? Like, would you tell them, like, what would you tell them to tell their parents, or what would you tell them to start doing? Like, just what advice in general, just about individuality? It doesn't have to necessarily be about that assumption.
Well, if it was something with your parents, if you want to at least, if you want to try and talk to your parents about it, you absolutely can and should, because even though you know on the level that, like, yeah, everybody is an individual, like, it doesn't mean your parents should be deprived of that knowledge. But if you do talk to them, if you tried to convince them so many times and they still won't change their mind, then just let that closed-mindedness end with you. Because
stay there.
yeah, just let it stay there, because you don't necessarily, that doesn't need to be brought up with everyone else.
Exactly.
And you as an individual can say that closed-mindedness is gone from, like, my family, my culture. Like, nah, we're gonna interact with the world here.
Yeah.
Because that's what cultures do. You interact with the world around you.
Yeah. Well, once again, thank you so much, Tim.
Great words, great words.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. I appreciate this.
And
Yeah.
thanks for the people listening as we take one closer step into infinity.
I'll see you guys next time, and make sure to, leave a like, comment your opinions down below. Let us know what you think, if you have any questions, and also check out our social medias. And thank you guys.
Yeah, thank
See
you.
you next time.
See ya.
See you.